Hello and welcome to the late night edition of the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85, and as usual, the show is brought to you by and powered by the world famous FTN Network. We got our guy Mike Randall out there at the Big East tournament. We got media credentials going on. I had to hit him up yesterday and say, "What's up with the credentials, man? Why am I not in Vegas and LA and watching Pac-12 basketball and Big West basketball?" And he said he'd get back to me. So next season, there's hope. There's hope for Dub Deuces yet. All right. Well, we are going on late here because DraftKings, with conference tournaments going on and pricing, and they're putting the games together. They didn't have the slates up yet. Last night, I was able to cover the early slate from a pricing perspective, but Maine, I had to kind of give my breakdown, for matchups and things like that, which we're going to probably end up having to do today. So we're going to primarily focus our attention this evening on the early slate, the 6-gamer. Definitely going to mention about the main and give a few plays there, or at least talk about matchups that we might be looking at. We'll talk a little bit about PrizePicks. We'll talk a little bit about betting, sides, props, totals if we got them. If you're watching live, thank you. Make sure you slam that like button. If you're watching on demand, do the same. Interact with us throughout the show, whether that's with comments, questions, concerns. You think we're dumb, you think we're smart, whatever it is, it helps us within the YouTube algorithm. The nice thing about this Friday night show, and the third Friday in a row, I think, we'll be joined by a special guest and co-host and a very smart young man. He was a real grinder of the grinders in the poker world. And now he does his thing in college basketball, and he's out there just going ham. He just last night went ham sandwich. I also got some of his good juju, good vibes last night. Just mere talking to the guy. I won a tournament last night. So I had to bring him on the show. Here he is, Eric Rasmussen. What's up, Razzle?
Oh, a lot. How's it going?
How's that for an intro, huh?
That was the best one I've ever had.
All right. Yeah. So, man, conference tournaments has taken a lot out of me with these late nights. It was only a couple years ago I could just stay up all night and then wake up and be fine and take like a cat nap and maybe when I say wake up, like you kind of nose off at the computer and then you're just good to go. But now it's like I gotta get a little bit of rest in, I feel like. And you told me you were taking a nap before the show, and then the salaries aren't out, so I know we haven't had a chance to really look at all of it that much. So we're kind of going to go through the slate for the first time really together here and give our initial thoughts. At this point, we're pretty familiar with the teams. Pricing is, going to be pretty similar to what it was with these squads before the last day or two. So we'll be able to talk in that regard and kind of just give our analysis here in real time. So we'll get right into it. And then I do want to talk about a little bit about what we consider main slate, which is the 5-gamer there. Just, talk a little bit about matchups and how well UCLA is playing and just kind of get into that a little bit. But we'll talk about the DFS side here first, and we'll dive into that early slate. First game on the slate here is going to be Missouri versus Alabama. Man, Bama, they really took care of business, and it's Javon. Since I think it was last week we were talking, Javon Quinterly, the chalk Quinterly, got to get off him. Now he's, we're leading the show on with Javon Quinterly again. He's priced up at 5.8 here. He's got a matchup against Missouri that's definitely a fantasy friendly matchup overall. Mainly, it's usually the bigs we like to target against Missouri, but I guess let's start it off with Javon Quinterly and get your take there. Price keeps creeping up, but he keeps being chalk. And I guess at 5.8, it's an ungodly price now. But if he's going to continue to minutes, I guess we have to consider him here in this spot.
Yeah, we definitely have to consider him, but I guess I just don't see him being a priority now at this price point. even last week when he talked about him being chalk at 4.7, he went 4.5x. So it's not like we had to have him. When we both talked about going with the fade, just because chalk Quinterly is traditionally a terrible place to be. I think this is kind of going to be his role, through the NCAA tournament. Like they're just putting it in his hands, trusting him more than Jaden Bradley at this point. So, I mean, he's going to have the 40 upside. Like he could come out tomorrow and drop 40, and I wouldn't be shocked. So, I think he's definitely a fine play, but he's not going to be somebody that we need to make sure we get exposure to, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm pretty happy to, when I can. You and I are kind of the same in that way because you're a big GPP guy. I play cash games sometimes like a GPP. I'm very risky in that way, and I don't like playing a guy just because everybody else is. And I felt that way on the Purdue guys earlier today, especially with Brandon Newman, who I thought was going to be a terrible option against Rutgers, and he still drew a ton of rostership because of his last game. Spots like that where you can really get away from and have a big edge over the field. So I feel the same on Quinterly. I'm always nervous about him. At this point, he's usurped Jaden Bradley. Even if Bradley's starting games, he's not even seeing 20 minutes. So you can't go there. It's difficult to really mess with any of the other, youngsters like Pringle and, he's playing 9 to 10 minutes. Griffin, same kind of thing. We did see a little bit of time there from Namari Burnett early on in that Mississippi State game. He picked up some fouls, but he was on his way to a pretty nice one. He hit a 3, had a couple of other buckets there, had almost 10 fantasy points, 3x at his min price. So Burnett might be getting some more minutes here and back on that train, but we'll see. The big thing of the Bama game for me was that Charles Bediako played really, really well, controlled his fouls against a front court in Mississippi State that I thought he would get trouble against. He didn't play well against them in the prior 2 games of the year, and he really did a great job. Protected the rim, 5 blocks, 11.6 rebounds. So his price is only 5-1. Going up against a Missouri front court that is really, really beatable and fantasy friendly. And we've been able to target bigs against them all pretty much since the SEC season started. So instead of going to maybe what will become a chalkier Quinterly, might you be interested in dropping down there to 5-1 and playing Bediako, knowing the foul risk and everything, but the way he's playing in the matchup, maybe it warrants using him instead.
Yeah, I was kicking myself a little bit for not having some exposure today. Just because I know that he can grab a bunch of rebounds, high rebound number per minute, which is always nice because there are going to be days today, South Carolina a couple weeks ago, where all of a sudden he just plays a bunch more minutes. And when that happens, it's real easy for him to get us 20 plus fantasy points. I'm not so sure about the matchup in general because I don't really know who he's going to guard. Yeah. And he picked up in the first time they met, and that was without Kobe Brown in the game. I think he picked up 4 fouls in 16 minutes of action. So now with Kobe playing, I do have some worries, but I think he's worth a couple shares in your builds.
Yeah, because that's always the worry with him is the fouls. But Missouri, their rebounding efficiency has gotten so bad. They're 362nd in defensive rebounding efficiency, 222nd in offensive rebounding efficiency. Their defenses are always kind of mediocre anyways. They have a really good offense. They're 7th per KenPom there and 78th tempo. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities if he can stay in the game. And that was my worry for him today and why I didn't end up having him either. Definitely hated that. But I was just, too worried about how he played against them earlier in the season. I don't want to have that same thing happen like it did, against Missouri the first go round. So maybe some GPP shares instead of playing him in my main. I'll see how that ends up, but I'm definitely looking at somebody from this Alabama team other than obviously paying $10K for Brandon Miller because I think he could smoke this matchup too, but I want to, get down to one of these cheaper guys. How about the Missouri side, man? They have been really good. There was a chance, or at least I thought there might be a chance Mosley would play. He was warmed up, or he was in warm-ups 2 games ago. but they didn't make the trip to Nashville, so they're not going to have him for this one. That means Des Moines Hodges getting pretty much all the shots he can possibly handle, and you put that with his strong peripherals that he normally gets. He has 11 steals in the past 3 games alone. Played really well against the Vols in what should have been a tough matchup, but 2 out of his last 3 games, he's hit 39 plus fantasy points. Price is 7.7, which I think most people look at that and say, well, that's a little bit too high. But when you see the way he's playing and how great he's been, it's actually probably a little bit underpriced from where he should be, especially without Mosley. And I know Mosley's been out for a month now, but there's just a lot of shots to be had on this Missouri team. And Honor took a bunch today. He looked good. Golston's had his moments. East has had his moments. Even Gomillion's had moments here or there. But I think at this point, Hodge has become the alpha on the perimeter and really started to become an offensive weapon, which he just wasn't that earlier on in the season. So what about the Missouri guys? Where are you at here? Because I'm a big Hodge guy, I think, at this point. In this matchup, it sucks. I hate against Alabama, but I really like the way he's playing right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be pretty high on Hodge overall. Just going to play the volume thing and hope it gets me there. I mean, Kobe Brown's going to be in play. Played extremely well today against Tennessee, which shocked me. So he definitely has to be in play for me, but I don't know. I'm going to guess I'm going to want to spend up other spots maybe, or try to be a little more balanced. I don't know. Obviously, with us just getting pricing now, I haven't had a chance to even look at what I think is going to be my preferred build, which is something I like to do right away just to get an idea of price ranges I'm going to find myself in. So I think I'm going to end up on Hodge mostly from the Missouri side. I haven't done well gambling with the, Noah Carter or Golston or Honor or even East. So I don't even think I'm going to try to predict who does what in that group. Maybe just hope that they balance each other out and all get 16 to 19 fantasy points and hope that it's Hodge or I guess even Brown. I will have a share of Brown because I'll definitely have a game stack of this one just in case.
Yeah. And it's a little easier now to get away from Noah Carter, who, at 6.3, that price feels a little bit too high. And he had a string of really easy games, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, which is why I ended up using him in 1 or 2 of those games, but definitely bounced off. Forward on that slate, that Tennessee slate was horrible. So I ended up with some Noah Carter begrudgingly, even though I didn't want it. And I'm definitely not going to be going to him here in this matchup. I think, you just find the salary to go up to one of Hodge or Brown. I like to take the little bit of the discount there. Jody in the chat does point out that Kobe Brown seems to, I haven't looked into this to verify. He mentioned it last night too, and he ended up being right about Brown today, but against over the last 2 years, apparently this last top 15 defenses, he plays up and down to his competition. So we'll see if there's any merit to that tomorrow. And if he has a big game against Alabama, we'll have to start reading into that because there might be something to it. All right, let's move to the next game here. Ohio State, the team that won't die. You take away a Zed Key. You take away today Bryce Sensabaugh, who's dealing with a knee soreness. He could have, I don't know what that's about. I've read some things on the message boards today, but I'm not going to say it's not real. But they turn around and they just really muscled and took the lunch money of the Spartans, man, because Bruce Thornton, who is playing really, really well. I mentioned this the last couple of Ohio State slates. Sensabaugh, started the season off really, really good. And Thornton was kind of finding his footing. And he was, the speed of the game really was too much for him. And now he's figured it out and things are clicking. And he looks like, a damn All-American. And he's been able to play really, really well. And that Michigan, the only thing is the defense is pretty shoddy. He was getting burned time and time again the last couple of games. And I thought Hoggard would just damage him. And that didn't happen. They sent Sparty. It looked like Sparty wasn't even interested in playing. Once they got down, there was like no fight in them. And you don't normally see that from an Izzo team. That really scared me going into the tournament here because I was kind of high on Spartans for a minute there. But after that one game against Ohio State, I'm feeling pretty worried about them. But Bruce Thornton got to be in play here against Purdue. His price keeps creeping up, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there. But, man, 4 straight games, over 26 fantasy points. He had 41 today against the Spartans after having 31 against Iowa. He's just playing a ton of minutes. He's taking a bunch of shots. He's still contributing, as the offensive initiator and getting others involved, but he's taking on more of that offensive load. And we saw that today without Sensabaugh. He really was hunting shots, and they weren't bad shots either. They were pretty high percentage looks, and it wasn't as if he was just bombing from long range. He was getting himself to the basket and creating things and doing some serious damage there. So still like Thornton a lot as a main team guy here at 6'2". I was a little late to him, within the last couple of games, but I'm definitely a believer. If Sensabaugh sits out again, I got to assume that Sewing at this point, who's it seems he's healthy. I've been kind of, being really careful with him because he's been so fragile, but 36 minutes today, 34 minutes yesterday. The day before that, 32. I do worry about him playing, so many games in a row with his injury history and playing these many minutes. But damn, the Buckeyes just will not die. And what I've seen from Purdue in their guard play, I guess I wouldn't be shocked to see the Buckeyes win this one too. But I do think they're going to start gassing out here. There are value options, but Sean McNeil's price has come up, over the last 2 days, 3 days, $500. Getting a little, uncomfortable with that. Okpara, who had a really nice game. Shit, I just missed that one because Spartans DVP against them, the front court players, but Okpara is just like minutes here. He's just kind of, not that great. But Sensabaugh being out, I should have reacted to that a little bit more. 30 against them, price up to 4.8, but going up against Purdue, that screams foul trouble for him. I think it's really, you want to trust Sewing and Thornton and everybody else is a little bit too risky. And then on the Purdue side, it's, do you want to pay that $11K plus price for Zach Edey? To me, he was a fade. Newman and Edey both had pretty decent rostership this morning going up against that tough matchup against Rutgers. I thought that was just not the spot to target those guys and got away from them, thankfully. And Edey, who, has been kind of underwhelming the last couple of games, and underwhelming for him, 2 of those were over 45 fantasy points still. So still a huge floor, but hasn't been hitting that ceiling. Might we see him get back to putting up a 60 or, 70 against a probably dead leg Ohio State team?
After I was burned so badly by him today, I'm afraid to say yes, but I'm just gonna have to go back to him. I wrote him in the 250Q today, and he didn't quite get it done for me. Not as bad as Noah Carter was in that lineup, even though I finished top 10 yet. I'm gonna have to go back to him. Okpara is like, there's a chance that Edey could just send him into the 5th row without even trying. Akbar is definitely long, but I don't know, what does he weigh? 190 pounds? I don't even know. He's bigger than that, but like when you're going to see them next to each other, like he's just going to look super thin. But yeah, I can't trust the guards on Purdue, so like it has to be Edey, right? Like, maybe we get another huge game out of Gillis or something, or maybe First steps up and makes some shots. But, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I can go back to the Newman thing either. I definitely faded him today, and that was a great thing. But I don't know. He gets so one of the things with DK's algorithm I just don't understand, right? Like, Newman was terrible today, gets a $500 price increase.
It almost feels like they're a game, like 2 games behind is what it feels like sometimes, or more.
Like we see other guys have strong games and all of a sudden they drop 200, for whatever reason. So I don't know. I probably won't end up much on this game overall. I'll ride Thornton again just because I've been there, but without him relying on perimeter shots and him trying to get to the rim in this matchup, like he was terrible from the field in the first meeting. I'd have to go back and watch, but I assume it's probably because he tried to shoot over Edey once he got into the lane, and that's, it's really not going to work that well. So I don't know, if I was a smart man, I would think about getting off Thornton in this spot, but I'm not really smart enough to do that.
Yeah, it's just like the volume is too good, I think, and that price is still a little too cheap, and it's without Sensabaugh, it's going to be difficult to get away from him. But this game definitely, especially with the way Derek Simpson played today. Simpson kind of a similar profile as Thornton. Like he was really good for Rutgers today. That kid's going to be a star next year. I'm so excited about the potential to use him at cheap in the beginning of the season. But he just, he was getting pretty much to the hoop whenever he wanted. He didn't shoot particularly well, but he got a ton of shots. And he went 3 for 11 on 2-point field goals, but he got to the line a bunch of times, shot 6 of 8 from the foul line, and was able to generate points there and had a really solid game, 18 real points. So we might see something similar from Thornton, and a 25 plus fantasy point game at 6-2 seems fairly inevitable. I'm starting to hate Purdue games though, from a DFS perspective. And it's a team, I have a future on them from the summer. I have like 3 or 4 teams I picked to put futures on. They're one of them. But I'm actually kind of like, shit, it's going to be tough if they make a run, because I'm really starting to hate their games. And because it's just like Edey at this price or not. And like the Purdue guards, I just don't know that they're going to be good enough to make a run. The prices, they're so attractive, like Lawyer's down to 4.9 now, like hello, but he's been really, really awful. Nothing like he was at the middle part of the season, losing minutes to the other guards. Braden Smith, who is a kind of jack of all trades type of player, he's also kind of starting to struggle a lot more now as teams really, focus on him on the perimeter. You mentioned Mason Gillis, who had a really solid outing, 32 fantasy points today against Rutgers, which was quite a surprise. Played over 30 minutes, typically playing about 15 to 18 though. So sort of rolling the dice there, but 370 is cheap enough. If I was going to use a Purdue guy that's cheap, it would probably be him over Newman, because I think Newman at almost 5K now is a no-go. He's been good. We knew the matchup today was an awful spot. Ohio State's a good spot for him to bounce back and potentially put up 18 to 20. He did have 18.5 against them just a couple of weeks ago. So I don't mind it, but the price it doesn't feel right. And there's other games on this slate that I just feel way better about. And we've had some teams who have advanced that maybe weren't expected to, and there's turned into some much better fantasy environments. So I think I'm going to have minimal exposure to this game overall, and it's going to be uncomfortable for me to fade it, but it's also going to be uncomfortable to roster guys from it. So we'll see. I've had some time to internalize it over the next couple hours and see where I feel about it. Cincinnati versus Houston, the Bearcats with a just absolute undressing of Temple by 30 points. They looked phenomenal. Like a really slow start for Nolly. He ends up with 31. Julius was awful today. He sometimes has these games. So he was really good, for like 4 or 5 straight, but he'll pop off with these random, duds. So 8-1 is probably too much for him. I don't really consider him anytime he's over 7-5 or even 7. The player I really want to go back to, who I got used earlier and got lucky because he had 7 blocks and 3 steals, is Victor Locken at 6'9", who did start, played the 25 minutes against Temple. He had a little bit of an advantage there going in against that Temple front court if he was going to play big minutes, and he did end up doing so and had just a monster game. I don't know why Temple kept trying to go in there against him, but he was just sending shot after shot back. It was awesome to watch. Now he's got the tough, matchup against Houston. Now this is a Houston team that another spot that I got a little lucky on earlier was the ECU with the kid Azor. He had a good game against Houston like a week or 2 ago, and that was something I talked about a little bit last night. And I thought out of all of the ECU guys, if one's going to go, it would be Ezra Azor. He did way more than I ever thought he would with 18 points and 19 rebounds. I'd be a liar to say I expected that. But I thought, a 4 or 5X game, I've been noticing at least the front court guys against Houston have been doing much better than the perimeter plays. The perimeter D has just been too tough for opposing guys. And Azor just owned the glass against Walker there and Roberts. So there is some merit to thinking Lacken can have a big game here at 6'9", if he doesn't foul, if he's healthy enough. Looks like they're starting to push his minutes up. We have seen him eclipse 20 minutes in 2 of his last 3. So I definitely think there's some upside there. When he did play Houston back at the end of January, he had 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, a steal, ended up with 28.5 fantasy points, shot the ball 14 times. So definitely a score at 7K that is, suitable, and we could see him eclipse further than that after what we saw today. Tournament setting, man, just you never know what's going to happen, guys, when you want to ride hot streaks. And with the way he's protecting the rim right now, I really like this play. And he's probably the only Cincy guy that I really want to trust against Houston, because Nolly's already been shut out against them. Paying almost 9K for him is going to be tough unless the matchup's ripe. DeJulius is a no-go. Davenport, he's like the 5th option sometimes. And Mika Adams-Woods, who had a really big game against Temple today and has been trending in the right direction, he's now going to be a no-go for me, because, again, this Houston perimeter defense is just really tough to go against. And I think I see Adams putting up like an 8 in this one. You don't have to chase those 2 big performances he's had when you consider he played SMU and Temple, whose defense is at least better than SMU, but they're not that elite considering Houston or any of these other teams in the league like Memphis or even Wichita State, whose defense had been pretty solid up until the last few weeks. So I'm on lock, and I think here from the Cincinnati side, Houston, same thing that I almost verbatim when I said last night. They're priced up. I could take it or leave it with them. There's really no chance that they're ever going to get them right. Unless you have all of them, you run multiple lineups and you get exposure, because the games just don't go off together. If it's Shed, then the front court sucked. If Shed bust, then typically Jarris Walker or Juwan Roberts went off. Sasser's pretty consistent, but we're paying a premium at almost $9K for, typically a 32 to 35. I know he put up almost 50 today, and he's done it a few times. But we're typically going to be in that mid 30s range. Do I want to maybe see if I can match that score for a little cheaper? I definitely do. Tremont Mark's usually my go-to option for them, but they've got him up to 7K now. I think that definitely is tough. Shot 1 for 10 today, put up 22 fantasy points despite. So that definitely intrigues me, because I know that he doesn't need to score to pay off, but they've taken out a lot of his upside with that 7K price point. So Houston side, I'm typically a little flustered with them. I try to stay away when possible. And this is a game that I'm not going to feel pigeonholed into using them, but I am as a connoisseur of DVP, and sometimes I mindlessly chase it. This might be a spot where I get into trouble with a guy like Victor, because I think he's going to do damage against Houston. So what do you think about this one?
I'm probably going to be fading Cincinnati. I like Locken, but I need him to play more minutes. Especially because I think against Houston, he needs the volume to get there rather than I think he can get there in 20 minutes. So, it pains me because I really wanted to use him today, but, recent trends just weren't in his favor, coming back from an ankle injury. Big guys with ankles are definitely not very trustworthy. We've seen it with Baycott when he's been dealing with his ankle thing. He's just not the same. So it's probably just going to end up being a fade for me. If I MME, do 150 lineups or something, I might throw in like a Skillings off the bench. He took a bunch of shots today, thinking that Houston might blow him out a little bit. He gets some more shots. I think I could see him getting a 6X type game. But generally I'm going to stay off. And then Houston, I almost never play Sasser now over 8K, just because they're so balanced that, I miss out on days like today, but how many games has he had where it's been 32, 3 to 37 and we didn't need to have him in our lineups to do anything. I can't go back to Roberts. He hurt me today. I really liked the matchup today, and he was non-existent offensively. He scored 27 DK points without scoring from the field, I think. Yeah, 27 and a half DK points, and he went 0 for 5 from the field. So I guess seeing that, I should want to play him, right? Because if all of a sudden now he goes 4 for 5 tomorrow from the field, all of a sudden he just put up a 35 spot. To where then if he gets double-digit shots, now he's going for 40. But the guy that really intrigues me is Walker, actually. 2 strong games against Cincinnati, and I think he has the matchup advantage against Oklahoma. So he's going to be the guy that I'm going to look to, I think, in the spot. So I feel like he's going to kind of go overlooked, right? People might jump on Sasser after the big game, or they might try to go to Shed or Mark since they're the cheapest 2 of that group. So I'm going to probably end up hanging my hat on Walker.
I like it. Yeah, Walker is definitely one to watch, but I think where I'm just going to be looking away from Houston, and like you said, if it turns into a blowout, then I hope they stay balanced. The Skillings, I didn't mention him because it was so random. There's been talks on Cincy, the Twitter and stuff about how good this Skillings kid can be, but he just hasn't got the opportunity. But my God, he was just making so many shots today. It was crazy. But yeah, if they're going to be pushing minutes on him at 3-3, it's at least interesting to a degree there for tournament purposes. All right, moving back into the SEC. The SEC's been pretty good to us, man, or been good to me. Targeting these crappy SEC teams was paying off between Gigi Jackson and the Vanderbilt stack the other night, last night, I guess, and then Vanderbilt coming back and beating Kentucky again today. That it's another team that just won't die, like Ohio State. Like Liam Robbins out, you would expect them to really just fall on their face. Earlier on in the season, this Vanderbilt team was such an atrocious train wreck of a squad. Like they couldn't just, buy a game. They were really struggling. They lost to Grambling State at one point, barely beat a Wofford team that's fairly mediocre. And just the rotation that Stackhouse was running, like just the fact that he thought he was Leonard Hamilton light or something like that, playing 13 guys and running his starters off the bench and playing them, it was just such a weird thing. And to see them here now at 20-13 and in the thick of it here, going up against the Texas A&M team that they might beat. I thought Texas A&M was going to drop today the way they played in the first half against Arkansas, but they made a nice recovery in the second. But with the way Vanderbilt's playing, man, they're red hot, and it's crazy to think because they got Jordan Wright, they got Ezra Mannion, they got Tyron Lawrence, Miles Stute, Trey Thomas. Like these are names that aren't striking fear in the hearts of anyone. And outside of maybe SEC fans or hardcore, CBB DFS players like ourselves, there's probably not a lot of people who could even name their starting five. So it's pretty wild to see that they're playing so well right now. The Texas A&M matchup is difficult, but at this point, matchups, they matter a lot still, but when you're in these tournament games and there's so many games in a row and there's tired legs, although Texas A&M is not going to be as tired as Vanderbilt, the matchups do, not matter quite as much there. And the fact that Stackhouse is finally giving these starters heavy minutes and kind of trimming down the rotation a little bit makes them very intriguing, and their prices haven't really caught up. Jordan Wright's pushed up over 7K now, but with the way he's playing, it's tough to not at least consider him for all formats. Ezra Mannion was really, really good again today. He had 25 points. Did turn the ball over 6 times, but hit 8 shots total. Got to the foul line a bunch of times. 39% usage rate. Just really good outing from him. Price is still under 6K. I really, really want to go back to him for a third time here just with the way he's playing, but it's definitely something that I'm going to at least pause and see how my lineup works out. But he's definitely somebody who should be up over 6.5 at this point. And like I said, the price just hasn't caught up. I do think I can get away from Tyron Lawrence, even though he played well again today at 6'9". He's the one I feel most uncomfortable with. And even though he's cheap, Quentin Malora-Brown, I just never find that's one of those like chalky values that I continue to say, if he beats me, fine. But more often than not, he's just not going to pay off very often. He did have 4 points, 4 rebounds, and assist in the block. I think he played better yesterday, but he wasn't too great today. His usage rate was like 6%. He's just not getting up shots. He's going to have to rebound block shots and get his stuff off the putbacks. And the fact that, even though the rotation is trimmed down a little bit, the minutes are being still taken from him and Colin Smith. So we're seeing Stute, Trey Thomas, and even Paul Lewis has been getting a little bit more minutes now lately as well. So Malora-Brown's just not that great of a play to me, even though he sits there at 4.3 and people are going to say like, hey, he's been, playing all these minutes. He's just a really low end value play. I'd almost rather take the shot for 1K less to Skillings just because I at least know he has some kind of upside compared to Malora-Brown. So I don't know, man. I think Vanderbilt's they're going to get rugged here soon. The Cinderella story is going to end and they're going to lose, but they're playing the team that I just hate. And we've had Texas A&M on the slate that we've worked together just recently. And same thing I always say, I trust one player on this team. It's Wade Taylor, but he's usually priced so high that over 8K that I'm not that excited about him. It's kind of like the Sasser price where, Taylor's never going to give us 40 plus. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but it's going to be very, very, very rare. I'm not sure he's done it even more than, I think he did it one time earlier this season, like in the non-con, but in SEC play, he's just putting up 35 to 36, which is not bad by any means, but just again, can I pay 7K for someone that's going to give me 35? Perhaps. With Dexter Dennis out, it made Tyrese Radford make sense. I'm not a Radford guy. I know you have used him to some success, especially recently. I think at 7.4, he's another guy that I can personally easily get away from, even though the matchup is great. Henry Coleman had a random ham game today. I do hope people are going to chase that. It's a good matchup for him, and I am scared about that one. But Coleman has, shit the bed in perfect matchups before. His price is cheap enough at 5.4. But I'm really, looking for my exposure to this team in maybe a little bit different ways than others. But Dexter Dennis at 5.4, not that he's been any more consistent than any of the other guys I just mentioned, but I think at 5.4, at least I can, swallow that price a little bit easier and hope that he's going to have one of his games where he eclipses 30. He played 36 minutes against Arkansas today. He's been over 30 minutes in the 3 straight games. I know he missed one in there, but we know he's going to be on the floor. He has a great matchup. I could see him having a similar game to what we just saw out of Trey Hannibal last night. Hannibal playing a similar style and position, had a double, big time rebounds, bunch of, 13 points, 12 rebounds, something like that. I actually think that Dennis has the profile to kind of mirror that performance and certainly be a little bit lower owned than some of the guys who might chase Coleman and the people who normally go to Radford, which he does actually end up drawing quite a bit of roster shit each and every week. Value-wise, I still like Anderson Garcia. He's, only played 12 minutes here against Arkansas. Before that, he had been hovering. He fouled out, actually. That's right. He fouled out in 12 minutes. He usually plays about 19 to 22 minutes. So at 4-1 and against Vanderbilt, I think he can absolutely get you a 4X number. Low-owned, very I guess a higher floor than maybe people realize. He's just not a name that people look at. But when you watch Texas A&M games, Anderson Garcia is always around the ball. He's very active. He's never standing in one place. So it's just one of those guys that you love to watch play because he's just all over the place. Julius Marble is sitting there at 4.6. If he plays upwards of 20-plus minutes, he could be the one over Coleman that ends up having a pretty solid game. So I'm interested in him. We did see Solomon Washington play over 15 to 16 minutes today. And then Obasake, who is back, is barely playing, but I do feel like there's going to be a situation coming up here when he plays upwards of 15 to 20 minutes as well. So if I have a throwaway lineup, I might throw my guy Manny in, but right now I'm looking at the Dennis, Marble, and Garcia trio, not all together, but in various lineups. Those are the 3 that I am looking at. What do you think?
I think I'm going to end up on Coleman personally. I hate the fact that it's coming off of such a strong game just because I love the matchup so much. Today I was highest on Shibwe, or tonight, I guess, whatever, of the spend ups because of this matchup. But then I also was very high on Toppin too. So I want to attack this game with their forwards. And I guess I like Coleman more than Marble. Coleman has rewarded me enough in the past where it seems like anytime I play Marble, it's just an absolute bloodbath for me. And then I miss games like Tennessee where he puts up 30 DK points against a tough defense. But I will use some Marble just because I feel like one of those 2 is going, 5.5X, maybe 6X, in this matchup. But yeah, with Taylor, I can't get there, even though a volume shooter can get there against Vanderbilt. I would almost rather just gamble with Radford, just because I like the multi-category upside. And if all of a sudden he takes 20 shots randomly, then we get a ceiling game. I think Dennis is fine. Kind of looks to me more like a last man in type play, probably going to get us 20 fantasy points, but could go for 30. Vanderbilt side, I don't know. Manhone is probably the one that I'll go with, and probably had a share or 2 of Wright, just because he's playing so well. But they're Wright and Lawrence are starting to get to that price point where I feel like we almost have to jump off of them. But I think A&M might have expended a bit of energy in their comeback tonight against Arkansas. So, I know they haven't played the, multiple days in a row or same amount as Vanderbilt or whatever. But, I could see there being a little hangover, which then would allow Vanderbilt to score a little more early on before A&M gets settled in. But, yeah, with pricing, I I don't really want to gamble with the extra guys on Vanderbilt to try to figure out who does what. Similar to with Missouri. Like, I just don't want to try to guess who might get there of the lower tier guys.
Yeah, no, it's really, when I wrote up Vanderbilt today, it was just the the trio and then Laura Brown there, the only ones we really could trust from a DFS perspective, because it's just going to be a rotating, a door there for everyone else. But yeah, the rebounds for some of these A&M guys are going to be huge. And so, like, I'm glad that we have a slightly different take on the player that's going to be, but we both agree it's going to be one of them, because there's just the front court matchup is going to be fantastic without Robbins. I just have those trust issues. I haven't had the luck you've had with Coleman. I haven't used Marble very much at all since he's been here with A&M, but this is just the 4.6 price tag is really appealing. I may just say F it and play Anderson Garcia, who did have 8 rebounds against Vanderbilt last time they played, and I don't think he's going to foul out in 12 minutes this time. So if give him 20 minutes at 4-1, I really do think he'll pay off. So maybe he's one of those sneakier options for me that I'll be on and the rest of the industry won't. All right, moving on, we have Penn State versus Indiana. The Nittany Lions they keep fighting their way through and really gritted out the win over Northwestern. That was a favor to us all, because I think I was done watching Northwestern play basketball. I know they're going to be popping back up here, but I was done watching them play for this week. So I'm glad they were able to pull the victory off there. Jalen Pickett, he's obviously, like, he's starting to look gassed. Like, all the shots he's taken, all the minutes he's played, all the high usage he's had, like the last part, like maybe the last 3 weeks of the season, he just has looked gassed to me. Which isn't great heading into the postseason. He's still a fantastic overall option, of course, but they desperately needed Cam Winter to start showing up, which he has, and some other guys to step up, like Funk today, to help carry the load a little bit, and we saw that was enough for them to pull the win over Northwestern. And Indiana had a fairly, I want to say dominant, they won by 10 points, but it didn't seem like they were ever in danger of losing that game. They did a really nice job negating everything Jameer Young wanted to do. He shot 2 of 10 from the field. Defense from Indiana was really impressive. Donta Scott, who really hammered them last time they played, he was pretty much, 10, 5, and 4, not a non-factor, but he wasn't a huge, guy there. Julian Reese was in foul trouble all the way. Could have predicted that one. Really, the only guy that you could end up using was Don Carey, because he was so cheap, and he did come through. But overall, TJD, he had like no rebounds for the first, half, first quarter and a half of the game. And he ended up with 9, but 24, 9, and 7. Just, I don't even know how you can talk about fading him at this point. We can get away from Edie a little bit maybe, but geez, with TJD, it's just so hard. And the matchup against Penn State is not the same level DVP as Michigan State front court, but it's been very good to us. Penn State's front court is typically the guys they run out in the 4s and 5s are a little undersized compared to some of these other Big Ten front courts. Sometimes Lundy's been asked to play center for them. What is he, 6'6"? There's been times where Andrew Funk has had to play small ball center. They do have Keba and Shirai at their like 6'10", 6'11", but he's just raw, going to foul out. There's really no chance of them containing, slowing down, stopping, whatever terminology you want to use against TJD. There just seems like an inevitability here that he's going to put up a massive score. And when I kind of adamantly am getting away from paying that ED price, even though he definitely could do well, it's really tough for me not to want to just go all in on TJD. Now, the thing that happened last time they played was it was a big time blowout in Penn State's favor, and TJD played 33 minutes, but they never really got him going. He had 14 and 11, 4 assists, 2 blocks, but he just didn't get going there. I think that was more of an anomaly, looking at what we're going to see and how he's going to play and how well he's playing right now in the last month and a half of the season, how he's just churning out these monster games after monster games. I think that he's the better play overall to me over Edie. You get a little bit of a discount, not by much, but it's enough to maybe finagle some other plays in there. And I just feel like his opportunity to blast off is a little bit higher than Zach Edey right now with the way that Indiana looked today and the way that TJD's been playing. So I'm on board with using him as a pay up if you can get there. We'll have to make some sacrifices because this game after Tulane versus Memphis, I'm so happy we have this. I'm always stacking Tulane games, but the prices on all the key players are super high. So we're going to have to sacrifice either those guys or we're going to have to sacrifice one of TJD, Zach Edey, possibly both. So I'm going to get your take on that in a second. To me, if you fade TJD, it's kind of been like, well, I want to try Race Thompson, which he had a nice game against Michigan, but then he faded back again today. Miller Kopp has been cheap. He's had, playing a lot of empty minutes, but he's out there. Trey Galloway's out there. He's played a lot of empty minutes. Malik Renew, who has kind of started to blossom a little bit, seems like he's the heir apparent out there. There are some GPP options to look at if you do want to fade TJD and play. Well, it's going to be one, a blowout, or two, maybe they do contain him. Maybe there's fouls. Maybe you want to play for one of those situations. You definitely want to look at some of the other Hoosiers guys. But in a main lineup setting, I think it's just you play TJD or you don't. I don't know that I want to mess around with the rest of the team, even though it is a great spot. On the other side for Penn State, I'm not going to get to pick it, even though the 10-2 is a reasonably affordable price. I just don't know that I'm seeing him push the 50 here in this spot, especially the way that Indiana shut down Jahmir Young. Pickett's a little bit different of a player than Jahmir Young, obviously, but I don't think he's going to find shots too easy to come by. They will need some production out of Cam Winter. I've been seeing quite a bit of rostership on Winter lately because he's played so well, but his price, is up over $5K there. He's, shown enough inconsistency lately to remind people that he is not a slam dunk play. Somebody called him a lock the other day, and I had to kind of, skirt. Like, we're not going to put that label on Cam Winter just yet. And it's really tough for me to really pay anyone on Penn State this season that wasn't named Jalen Pickett and sometimes wasn't named Seth Lundy. So probably mostly off the Nittany Lions side, and that might be a mistake here, or maybe I'm giving the Hoosiers too much credit for how well they played lately defensively, and then just deciding on if I can get to TJD and how much I'm willing to sacrifice my exposure to the Tulane guys. So what do you think between TJD and Edey? I know you were talking about maybe just using him anyways, Edey, but what are you doing with TJD and anyone else in this game? Because this is one where I could see it being like a mini stack, or I could see it just being absolutely dreadful. Like no in between.
Yeah, I think TJD's definitely the top play on the slate. Even more than anybody in the final game that we're gonna go with. Like, he's as close to a lock as there can be these days, right? Like, I mean, he's just putting up 50 plus left and right. So I'm not really looking to fade those kind of numbers. And I have been using, interior players against Penn State for a while, and I'm going to keep doing it. They just don't have the size. And then once he gets Hen and all those guys into foul trouble, like, he's going to post up Lundy and Miles Dredd. Like, he's just going to destroy those guys. And if Pickett tries to go with his normal offensive play, like, TJD's probably going to swat 4 or 5 shots. Pickett likes to get down and post up guys because he's stronger than a lot of the guards that are on him. But, I mean, he's going to have to go through TJD at the rim. So it's going to be tough to not want to have TJD in a majority of my lineups. Kind of glad there's not another queue left, because then I'd have to sit and try to figure out if I have to jam him in the queue. Penn State wise, like, I'm just going to go back to Winter and Funk and try to get one of those guys correct. I just don't know, Funk got there today. I was higher on Winter. I used them both, but I don't know. I probably just have to match ownership on each of them just to hopefully get it correct. They just feel like one of those guys is going to have to make perimeter shots to have a chance to pull off a W. I know they blew him out in the regular season, but it's obviously a much different situation now.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Funk, I mean, they're both playing over 30 minutes, but it seems like Funk's pretty much playing the entire game, like, all but 1 or 2 minutes, and Winter's more on the lower 30s range. So if you're wanting the obviously guy that's going to be on the court longer, it does seem like Funk would be that dude. But yeah, it's pretty tough because I don't know that any of them are going to have too much success doing what they normally would do. But if one of those guys is hitting threes, then that 5-1, 5-2 price tag is still attainable to make value. I think I would probably lean Funk if I had to get pigeonholed into one of them. I'm just not as high on Winter, I think, as the rest of the field. And it's funny because when he was at Drexel and they would be on the slate, I was all about him. But different role, different time now. Yeah, paying 10.9 for TJD. It's a crazy price to pay, but man, he's been so good. And I'm still a little butthurt about how he was like low owned against Michigan State recently, and that was the fantastic matchup. And of course, he dudded there. And I just really wish he would have punished people for fading him in that game. And I've still been kind of thinking about that one, but it's another spot to see because we have the last game we're going to talk about. We have probably player of the year Zach Edey. We have TJD. You can't play them all, so there's going to be one of those guys. Between Cook and Forbes Cross and TJD and Edey is going to be lower owned, like sub 20%. And that's kind of the guy that I want. I have a feeling it might be Zach, but I would hope it would be TJD because then I'd feel really good about this slate and go way too hard. But we'll see. I'll have to poke around and see what people are thinking. All right, last game on the slate, and definitely the one that I would love. Of course, I'm a big Tulane fan. I have them valued way higher than anyone else. I think they're way better than they actually are. I think they're going to win this auto bid and go to the second weekend of the tournament and all this other stuff. Like, I love this team. They play so fast. They have just an amazing backcourt of Jalen Cook, Jalen Forbes, the double Jalen show. Wichita State's defense has been hit or miss. They've had some nails games, but man, Tulane really did well today. And it wasn't even a great game for Jalen Cook. Scoring wise, he had just 13 points, and Craig Porter damn near flirted with another triple double there. Like, they couldn't stop him, and which is pretty typical of Tulane's defense. But they gutted that one out and had a nice win and put 82 on Wichita State. So a pretty impressive game. It was Kevin Cross though who ended up stealing the show. 24 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks. Just a monster game from him. The nice thing about what Coach Hunter does with his group here is he's not going to dip into his bench very much. And the game tonight was pretty close throughout. Zion James played all 40 minutes. Forbes played 37, Cook 36, Cross 35. That's going to be pretty typical for those guys going forward. Barring foul trouble. If foul trouble happens for Cross, he'll still play him, but he could lose minutes that way. And then we saw RJ McGee off the bench play 28, and Tylen Pope played just the 18. Colin Holloway, who's barely playing, played 6. So that's pretty much the rotation we're looking at for Tulane. All these guys are going to play a lot. Now, anytime Tulane's been on the slate prior to this month, or prior to, I should say, mid-February, it's been easy to stack like 2 to 3 of them, run it back with one of their opponents because they were priced way too low. Now DK's over adjusted, and Jalen Cook, like, much as I love Jalen Cook and want to use him all the time, 9.4 is even a lot for me. There's downside to that price. It's just really tough to get there. And if I want Tulane exposure like I do, I would probably be smarter just to take the 1K discount and go down to Forbes or Cross, who can match or exceed what Cook can do. And they can all go off. I think Cross is the most volatile and will be the lower owned of the 3, which makes him really interesting for GPPs. Forbes is the one that I think I would settle in on the most for my main build, just because you get that discount and he's shooting so much, he's going to be able to get there. The secondary options are even too high priced, like Zion James for 6.6. That's just going to be way out of whack for me. I can't get there for him. He needs to be in the mid 5s. Tylen Pope is almost 6K. That's also too high for me. Like, he needs to be low 5K. And then there's no one else really to use unless we think RJ McGee, who played those additional minutes today. He played prior to today 20 plus minutes in back-to-back games. He's only 3.2. If that's a way to get Tulane exposure and a cheap, playing 20 minutes bench player, it's definitely a possibility and something worth looking at. On the Memphis side, knowing that Tulane's defense is just absolute Duke Blue Devils. They give up so many points to their opponents, and there's always a ton of fantasy goodness in these games. I would expect a really mammoth performance from some of these Memphis guys. Now, Tulane edged them out at FedEx just beginning of the month, February, 90 to 89. DeAndre Williams had 19 and 17 and 5 assists. Kendrick Davis had 26, 5 and 7. Like those two guys just absolutely smashed. Keontae Kennedy had a nice game, although he won't be around. Even Jaden Hardaway had like 11 off the bench. That's how easy this defense is. Memphis today, DeAndre Williams was just an animal against a pretty decent UCF team. They had to overcome a CJ Kelly NBA Jam hotspot performance, but they did. DeAndre Williams 35 points, 13 rebounds, and Kendrick Davis 33.7 assists. Everybody else on the team was under 5 points. It's a two-man show for Memphis right now. Elijah McAdams had his moments, but at this point, Memphis is, they're playing for an automatic bid. They're playing for this tournament title. The Lawsons are pretty ineffective. They're just out there to rebound and get the ball to the main two. McAdams has his moments, but again, he's not out there to take shots really. Malcolm Dandridge has been playing more, but he's more defensive side. Alex Lomax is a good initiator of the offense and a good, if you need to get the ball up the court and no turnovers kind of thing, Alex Lomax is good for that. But at this point, it's painfully obvious after watching today's game that it's going to be all Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams. And ordinarily, I'd do all I could to get those two guys plus one of the Tulane guys, but that's just not going to be possible because they're all super expensive. Kendrick Davis is 9.2, DeAndre Williams is 9.1. I definitely want one, and I will not go a single lineup without at least one in my build, and I'll have some with two. But knowing that I'm going to have to play one of those guys at over 9K really is going to change the complexity of the rest of my build and how I normally would go with a semi-balanced approach, because most of the guys I like on this slate are all super expensive this time. TJD, Williams, Davis, everybody on Tulane, Brandon Miller, Moy Hodge. Like it's going to be, I think Hodge might be a victim where I would normally put him into my lineup without thinking about it. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to get there. And I haven't tried to build a single lineup yet. So I don't know value wise how it's going to work out to fit these guys. I'm going to have to find a way, and I'm going to probably have to do some sort of, really disgusting punt that I don't like and just hope that the guys that I pay up for go for 50, because this Tulane Memphis game is liable to go like into the hundreds for each. They're going to make it really tough to stack, but if you can figure it out and do it in a way that makes sense without sacrificing the integrity of the rest of your build, you're going to coast into a fairly easy cash. Beyond that, upper tier cash and banking and taking down tournaments and all that, you'll have to finagle it a little bit more. But I feel like if you can get 3 from this game, 3 of the big dogs, you're probably coasting, really, really coasting. And I just don't know that it's going to be possible for a lot of people because they're going to be hung up on the EDTJD guys. You're just not playing 5. You're not playing those 5 together. It's not going to happen. It'd be nice if you had the option to be like, DK would like let you drop positions out and just say, you know what, I just want these 5 guys. I don't need the other 3 spots. Like that would be pretty dope. They should come out with some contests like that someday. But since they don't allow that, you're just not going to be able to fit all those guys in. So how are you at this point? I would normally rattle off all the efficiency, but we've talked about these teams a million times at this point. The people watching us know who's good and who's not. But how are you prioritizing this list here in this game between, the top Cook, Davis, Williams, Forbes, Cross, like those 5, obviously head and shoulders the best options from this game. Maybe RJ McGee and just hope that he falls into like 15 or something. How are you prioritizing those 5 though?
Yeah, there's going to be some gymnastics done, building lineups and trying to get the combinations we want from this game. I'm not really looking forward to it because I have to make sure to remind myself to not sacrifice from this game. Like I need to target the right guys in this game, and it's the guys at the top, obviously. With McGee probably. I think I am going to rank those 5 guys in this game. I'm going to go with Forbes number 1, DeAndre Williams 2, Kendrick 3, Cross 4, and Cook 5. Okay. That 900 savings, like you talked about for Forbes off of Cook, just makes way too much sense to me. I actually think Forbes is safer of a play as well. Yeah. May not have the same pure ceiling, but I just don't know if Jalen Cook gets to a pure ceiling for me to eat my words, I guess. And then with Memphis, I generally play DeAndre over Kendrick Davis. I just love the stat stuffing ability, like going out there and putting up 20, 12, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 3 steals, like getting those games and not having to rely on Kendrick Davis, like dropping 35 game points. I might be a little different than you in that I'm going to have some Zion James. I know he's a little expensive. And if he only had done it once against Memphis this year, like I could shake it off. But the last meeting he put up 34 DK points. He did have 7 steals, but like steals and blocks are part of his game. He had 6 blocks today, I think it was. But the big thing was the first meeting, he put up 59 DK points and only took 8 shots from the field. Like seeing those kind of numbers, like there's upside there. Like, yeah, the price point is kind of gross. Like I'm going to give you that for sure. But, he put up 30 today too. And Memphis does have some issue with the turnovers, especially steals against them. Those were efficiency numbers that I was going to bring up. Like they're 288th in the nation. So they're bottom 80 team, bottom 75-ish team. And they also have their shots blocked at a higher than average clip as well. So like I feel like one of those guys on Tulane might pick up some block steals and get there. Like it's tough to predict those things, right? Because a lot of those things are random, especially the steal numbers. But there's going to be some steals, so I'm going to go with the guys that I think are likely to pick those up from a team like Tulane. Memphis wise, like I'm going to have to dig in more minutes and rotation wise, but yeah, like once I saw today's box score, realizing that it was purely a 2-man game, it's going to make it really tough to go to anybody else. If Lomax was completely healthy and playing normal, early season minutes, I think he'd be a great play at 5,300, but he's just not. He's not the same guy right now. So then I don't know. Like I've played McCadden to some success recently. He has upside, but it's been 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks since he did anything. So I don't know. It's going to be tough to get there, but I can see one of these secondary Memphis pieces being important. It's just who or how do we get to one of them is going to be the big question.
Yeah, and looking at going back to the February 16th, the UCF game, and looking at just usage rates only, and I know there's more to it than just that, but DeAndre Williams and Kendrick Davis, the only two over 22% usage rate. They both over 30 in that game. Then you go to the Houston game in which they got they didn't get their doors blown off, but they weren't super competitive. But again, DeAndre Williams over 30% usage rate. Kendrick Davis, I don't think he played in that one. McCadden was good there because of it. And then you go to the Wichita State game, 30% usage rate for Kendrick Davis. Really no one else. Lawson had a random game, but everyone else in the mid-teens. SMU game, Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams over 30% usage. Everybody else below 20. Like, yeah, it's just, I think you're getting to the point with those two in this part of the season where Penny's just riding them. And you're right. There will be somebody else that besides them that ends up paying off because the other guys are so cheap and Tulane's defense is so horrific. It's just going to be really, really difficult to say who that might be. Now, if you have those throwaway lineups or you're running the, 50 plus builds, whatever, you can definitely cycle through some of those guys like McCadden at 5.5 against Tulane. That would appear to be a very strong spot to go with him. He's just, like you said, kind of fallen off a little bit here recently. And that's just because those other two guys are doing so much, but the shot attempts are still there. 1 for 8 today against Houston. He was 2 for 8. So he's still getting those attempts for him at 5.5 to pay off. He just hasn't been hitting them. And against Tulane, he can very well do that. So I do like McCadden to a degree here, but I'm just knowing that the lineup I want to build with these heavy hitters is going to force me into that more traditional studs and scrubs build, which might make McGee more of a main team play than I expected him to be. And it may make me go over to Purdue and start dumpster diving and saying, is this a Morton game? Is this a Kaufman-Wren game? Can I get Caleb First to show me some of his early season, heroics? Can he play more than 7 minutes today? There's going to be a lot of soul searching here when building this lineup and my main, and might even go to Alabama and say, you know what, it's back to Namari Burnett at min price and just take his 4 and hope for the best. This is going to be a really interesting slate, and I think they'll be spread out rostership, although I thought that yesterday, and we ended up having a ton of chalk on the earlier slate, which wasn't confusing to me, but it was kind of disappointing on a 12-gamer, and it allowed us to have you and I to have good slates because we're generally pretty leverage oriented anyways. And those are the slates I love when everybody eats chalk on a big slate. So if that happens here on this one, I think we could really have a big showing, but also could see a lot of landmines happening here too. And my worry with Tulane is that they come out a little flat, and that's why I'm probably not going up to Jalen Cook, because he does have these slower starts where he comes on in the second half. Like, he's a big time second half performer. And there was a game recently I had him where he was under 15 at halftime, and he ended up finishing, I think it was the last time they played Wichita, he ended up finishing with almost 40 because he just started hitting all these threes, just like 3 in a row. He can put up fantasy points in a hurry, makes him a very high level GPP play. But I think that a lot of people will think the same way you and I do and put him towards the end of that 5-man priority list, which then kind of puts me back towards wanting him, but it's going to be hard to get there. But we're both in agreement that Forbes is probably a core lock here. I'm on board with the DeAndre Williams play just because of how good he's been. I certainly want Kendrick Davis because he thrives in these fast-paced, situations and environments. So getting to get up and down the court and, super quick, I would be very shocked if he doesn't flirt with 50 fantasy points. That's what he did against them in overtime last time. But you're right. He's going to have to score a ton. And if his shot is off, or he's not making buckets, or God forbid he gets into foul trouble as a guard, which does happen sometimes, then, he's just not going to be able to get that volume to get there. But if Tulane pushes them and pushes this one, to the very end, and we have overtime potential here, there's potential for it to break the slate so hard. You could maybe have 2 other spots that totally blank, and not zeros, but maybe 2x, and still have a monster slate. So it's a very difficult decision to make, and you make a great point. You don't want to blow too much PMR early here, trying to get involved in maybe some safe options in the Bama Purdue game that are too expensive, because you're just going to hamstring yourself if you don't have enough of this game. And it's probably a good thing that they're so high priced, because otherwise it would just be all stacks of this game in every single contest, and we'd all be overlapped. At least this way, you have to really think about it and be somewhat intelligent in the way that you're going to build here. It could even be one of the Lawson brothers games. Like, this is a spot for Chandler Lawson where I think he could actually detonate if the minutes are there. He had only 10 minutes against Tulane in their last game because of foul trouble, but he put up 16. So if Lawson were to get 22 minutes or something like that, he could just absolutely detonate at 4K too. So we may have to end up just playing some of these cheapy guys from the same game in order to get their counterparts up top. I think I'll have no less than 4 in my lineup from it, but we'll see what it works out. It's just the tough decision of TJD or an extra pay up from this game. That's where my dilemma lays, and that's where I'll be thinking for a while, because Kendrick Davis at 9.2 is still a really good, it's high price, sure, but for him, that feels like an advantageous price, 200 less than Cook. And in this matchup, I just don't think they hold him under 40. I'm not sure they're going to hold him under 50. So that might be the determining factor for me to use Kendrick over TJD and just pray to God that he doesn't put up 70. All right, so that is the early slate. What are you looking at right now for a core? And that could change. I know when you're doing your write-ups and stuff, that'll change because you'll have more time to internalize the slate, analyze it, and really go through the numbers. But as of right now, this minute, if you had to put in a lineup, what's the 3 guys that you're going to war with?
Oh boy! All right, let's kind of think back here. Man, it's gonna be really difficult to nailed down. We're gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Forbes and DeAndre Williams from this last game. Like, I'm just gonna go back and forth with those two. And then right now, I'm probably leaning somebody like Andrew Funk. Like, it pains me to think of that, but like that price range is probably going to come in. I guess be really important. If we're stacking up this last game with the high price guys, like I think we're going to have to nail that low to mid 5K range with a play. So I'm probably going to go with Funk in that range. I could have made you shake your head and go with Henry Coleman, but I just couldn't convince myself to do that. But I'm also going to add, like, from Memphis-wise, like you brought him up right at the end, like Chandler Lawson's probably going to be a guy that I'm going to end up heavy on, like he and Dandridge. Like Dandridge could go 8X, like he's done it before, so like the upside is there. So I'm, like I guess if we're going to look at complete punt plays, I would rather find them in the high-paced, high-scoring game and just try to catch them in that lightning in a bottle. Like if like Ohio State and Purdue had like a bunch of guys in the mid to upper 3Ks or whatever, like I still would look at the Memphis side just because like the game environments are completely different. And we're already swinging for upside as it is. So like I'm not really necessarily looking for a safe value play. I'm just going to go pure swing for the fences mode.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense because you're not going to win or lose. Well, if they hit swing, if they hit a home run, then you're definitely winning with them. But most of the time here, I have to say this to some of my folks in the Discord. We're playing these cheapies not necessarily for what they can score for us, although it's nice. It's more for the salary savings and what they bring us. And they bring us those TJDs and they bring us those Oscars and those guys. And we need those guys to hit their, 50 and 60 fantasy points. It's really about that. And so knowing that, there's no reason to really take a safe value guy, because what's a safe value guy going to bring? Typically still probably going to be around 2.5 to 3X on his, on some of his better days, and taking in a guy like Chandler Lawson, who I think people might overlook because, the minutes are all over the place. He is starting the last 6 games, but he has some sneakier upside that people probably don't realize. Now, the first game they played against Tulane, which was back on, let me pull it up here, January 1st, he logged 22 minutes. He had the 4 points, but 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks, just a monster game where, he doesn't have to affect things by scoring. He's going to be able to do those other things and get a bunch of rebounds off these missed Tulane threes. When Cook and other guys drive the lane, he's going to have block upside. It's just getting him to avoid any foul trouble if he gets over aggressive. But it definitely seems like right now Penny's giving him about 20 to 22 minutes in that 4K. In this game, knowing he only needed 10 to really pay off, it makes me kind of more excited as we've had some time here to talk the last 10 minutes about this game. I'm starting to feel I'm in agreement with you that Chandler Lawson's starting to look a whole hell of a lot more appealing than he did just 10 minutes ago after we've had time to really think about it. So, I think he's actually becoming one of the better values now. All right. So I didn't cut you. You got all 3 in, right?
Yeah. I mean, going with my third one is like Andrew Funk.
Okay.
Talking about that price range. And to give you an example, like I just kind of built one quick using 5 guys from that last game, and I jammed in TJD. Ooh. And you're basically going to end up with 2 guys between 5 and 6K in that build.
That's not bad. That's not
bad. If you're using like McGee and Dandridge, so like you're gonna end up in that 5K range where I think it's gonna be important, which is why I ended up on Funk. But I actually really like this lineup, so it's about to be entered in the $15 right now.
Nice. Yeah, and I do say that a lot too. Like that last man in spot, it tends to be in that kind of 5-4 to 6-5 range. Like how more once you start thinking about it and looking for it, and you notice like you build your lineup, you like it. Okay, got my last guy. Oh, that's the salary range you typically end in. It's rare to have like oh, my last guy ins 8K. Like that doesn't happen, right? Because you're usually starting with those guys, and my last guy in being 3K, like it's usually in that price point. So the funk play, yeah, definitely appealing. I really want to pull the trigger on Bediako. I just, got to be nervous about fouls, of course, but geez, he could really do some damage in that matchup here, especially the way he played today. So I'm really trying to decide on him. But I think my core kind of mirrors some of yours, but I think starts with DeAndre Williams. I think he's got to be just the centerpiece of any optimal build. He's going to be probably will end up being highly rostered there because the matchup's great. He's coming off a huge game. He's just, there's legit 35 and 18 upside there between points and rebounds, and then giving you a couple of steals, some assists, hitting some threes, whatever. Like there's just mammoth slate breaking upside there. So Williams definitely where I'm starting my lineups. Then I'm going to go over and look at the cheapies between McGee, Lawson. I personally really going to probably be a little stubborn on this, but I like Anderson Garcia. The minutes, obviously, they're not going to be 30, but they're typically going to be around 20 to 22. And at 4-1 against Vandy, I do think he's got that upside. He does have a little bit of a foul issue at times. We saw him foul out today in 12 minutes. He fouled out against Mississippi State, his old team, in 20 minutes a few weeks back. So there is that, potential to be horrific. But against Vanderbilt last time in 21 minutes, he put up 5 points, 8 rebounds, 16.5 fantasy points. We know there's going to be a lot of rebounding upside for the Aggies. So as of now, my second core for value is going to be between Lawson and Garcia. So I guess they'll be like, 2A, 2B. It's kind of cheaping out a little bit, but between those two, one of those is going to be in my main, and they might both end up being in my main depending on how that shakes out. But those are my two kind of favorite values at the moment. And McGee, I think, will fall into him just because he's so cheap, but he's not exactly my favorite play on the slate or anything. And then my third core, because I really want to play Lock-in against Houston, but I don't know that I'll end up being able to do it. I'll have to do it in an alt lineup somewhere. I really like what he might do. But my third core is going to just be Jalen Forbes. Really, really easy. Forbes, DeAndre Williams together, mirroring what you're saying there. Those two just seem like the two from the game for your main build to go with because of the safety that they typically have, and there's upside as well. Forbes has a really good chance with his 3-point shooting ability to match or exceed Cook for cheaper. Only 100 more than Kevin Cross, who we know carries way more risk because of his foul issues that come up. He's at the mercy of the guards sometimes because he's not going to have all the offense built around him. He has to get a lot of his stuff on the inside on putbacks, although today they were looking for him more, but typically Cook and Forbes are going to be just jacking. So Cross isn't going to be that big-time scorer. So Forbes just by default there, and his price ends up being the best Tulane play for me. So Forbes, Williams, and then one of Garcia or Lawson, likely going to be on both, but we'll see how that shakes out. 4 guys minimum from the Tulane-Memphis game. That's just kind of how it has to be for me. All right. So the main slate's not going to be up. So we'll have Utah State and Boise State are still playing. Looks like Utah State's starting to pull away there. And Boise State just got a tech called on them. So it looks like they're about to drop to Utah State here and play against San Diego State. So that'll fill in the 5-gamer, Texas versus Kansas. Likely, unless something happens here in the next 3 minutes, Utah State versus SDSU, Xavier versus Marquette, which should be fantastic. Duke versus Virginia, which, man, that's going to be a really fun one to watch, I think. And then Arizona versus UCLA. While we're on the air, the Wildcats put ASU away. Thankfully, I needed ASU to lose for our Corey's Wins League on Fantrax. So we don't have prices at our disposal, but we know pretty much where some of these guys are going to be priced at. Now, I had a huge game from Dylan Disu at lower ownership last night that helped me, to have a takedown. Went back to him today. Of course, a lot of people did. He had another great game. Let's start with that while we're talking about this main slate here. Obviously, like I said, we don't have prices, but we know matchups. Do you think Dylan Disu, assuming he's in the 5.5 to 6K range going up against Kansas. Do you think it's just he's playing so well, it's just a heat check, like, matchup be damned, I'm playing Dylan Deso and going back to him for a third straight night, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think kind of have to go with a heat check, but I do worry about fouls with the attacking of Kansas. Maybe he avoids some foul troubles with like McCullough not being 100%. So like I don't know that McCullough's going to try to get to the rim all that much and try to go through contact with his back issues. And obviously it kind of depends. I haven't seen the latest update on Timmy Allen, like if he's expected to return or what, but I mean, it's tough to fade the upside of Disu when he's playing so well. We saw it at Vanderbilt, before his transfer, before his injuries, like he super explosive guy, like he and Pippen Jr. that one year were just ridiculous. So I'm definitely going to go back to him. I kind of want to go back to Rice more than Disu. Rice shot the ball pretty badly tonight, so I kind of like the idea of a bounce back from that side.
Yeah, and Rice, man, he had 6 rebounds. He had 3 steals, a couple of blocks. Like he could have, some people were kind of complaining, but it's like, damn, if those shots, he went 0 for 7 from deep. If those shots would have fallen, he would have had just the night that a lot of us thought he might. So yeah, I like the idea of going back to him. Now it's going to be tough because if I've benefited from DC the last 2 nights and I want to go back to him, but he was awful in both games against Kansas. You brought up foul trouble potential. He was in foul trouble in both games, especially the last one. He had 11 minutes played because of fouls in their last, and that was just like 2 weeks ago against Kansas. So that's one of those things where like the matchup sucks for him. But he's so hot right now in the tournament, like we'll have to decide because you got to assume he'll be pretty popular because of what he's been doing. And then, of course, you have Tyrese Hunter, who kind of regressed back the last 2 games. Maybe his price falls a little bit. I do like the idea of possibly going back to him as well. The Duke-Virginia game, man, that's just, God. I was hoping that one of those 2 would lose today. Unfortunately for Miami, Norchad got a really serious injury like 35 seconds into the game, which just threw off the competitive balance for them throughout. They, had their chances there, but they couldn't protect the rim. Flip was getting down there. Mark Mitchell had a nice game, so that just hurt him. But Duke versus Virginia, that's kind of, Virginia's been your wheelhouse. How do you see this one playing out, or what do you do with the Duke guys? Duke's rotation, which has typically been deep, by the way, all 5 starters played over 30 minutes tonight. So we're seeing a very condensed rotation for the Blue Devils at this moment.
Yeah, I don't really know.
They went to overtime last time they played too. Virginia won 69-62.
It's gonna be tough to get to Duke, I think.
Yeah.
You've been doing this together for a long time where I've been targeting bigs against Virginia, for years now. So I guess I could end up on Filipowski, but I just don't know that I'm gonna get there. Because Lively controls so much of the interior from a rebounding standpoint, but I just don't know that he's going to get off too many shots in this game. So, and he's not cheap enough where I can rely on him just grabbing, 12 rebounds and blocking 4 or 5 shots. I like the way like Proctor's been playing. It's kind of been on the ball a little bit more than Roach. So I can see a route to where one of those 2 guys kind of pay off, but I don't feel good about it, so I don't know that I'm going to go there. I'm going to have some interest in the Virginia side. Like Gardner's just playing out of his mind right now. Shedrick's getting minutes again because of Vanderplas's broken hand. Shedrick was good against UNC, and then today he was strong as well. I think he went 6X-ish, somewhere in that range. Kind of depends if his price jumps back up now that he's playing minutes or not. But, I don't know. I think this just ends up being a good game to watch. Back and shouldn't say back and forth because it's not going to be a high scoring game, but just a battle every possession, really.
Yeah, I'm interested to watch it for that too, and I'll be rooting for Virginia. Shedrick fouled out in 17 minutes, but he still, like you said, hit value and beyond if you used him. So some productivity there from Shedrick. They've been starting Cafaro. Ryan Dunn played 21 minutes off the bench tonight, but he had a 2% usage rate, so it wasn't great. And they've started to play McNeely less, who I really like, but he's just a little bit too raw yet. So that'll be one that, I'll try to back away from. We tend to see Duke games from a casual standpoint, attract a lot of attention, but I think people will know Virginia is kind of tough, and that game may end up being just kind of pushed aside by most. And I think the same thing may happen, or it should, with the San Diego State. And like I said, it looks like Utah State's going to end up pulling away from Boise here. Or that game might just be over. So it is over. Okay. So Utah State versus San Diego State, that's going to be kind of a rough and tumble defensive battle. There's going to be, not a lot of fancy goodness from the Aztecs, and there really hasn't been, even though prices on Bradley and, Butler and some of these other guys on their team have been, interesting. That's one that I'm also probably putting a little on the back burner. And when you do that, it kind of puts everything into a bucket of 3 games, Texas, Kansas, we just talked about, and then Xavier Marquette, which is going to be a really obvious stack because both rotations are tight. Xavier out of necessity. Colby Jones has been a very strong play. Sully Boom looked good tonight. On the Marquette side, how do you even consider fading Tyler Kolek in this spot, as good as he's been? His price, I hope it's like $10K, so it makes people think about it. And then the Arizona UCLA game, which I think is really going to be where the money's won because Pac-12 tends to be a league where people, they don't pay attention to as much on the East Coast because it plays late. We have really, really been early on Tiger Campbell. Campbell, for most of his career, not a big-time scorer. Even pre-Jalen Clark injury, he started taking on more of the scoring load, and just like his game has developed an extra gear this season, and he's taking on more of that scoring load, and he's actually able to take over games, and that's something we didn't see out of Tiger Campbell in the past couple of years that he's played. And now that Clark's out with the injury, Campbell's just taking it to an additional level, and people haven't adjusted. His PRA on DK has been 21.5. I've been slamming the over the last 3 games with him. All of those have hit. He was relatively popular in the night slate against Colorado, but today against Oregon, he had very, very minuscule ownership, and that was one that I was hell-bent on playing no matter what. He scored 28 real points against Oregon. Oregon's terrible. I knew he was going to do well, and he took 8 triples, which is really big, and then a total of over 20 shots. He made, 11. 6 assists, still getting his dimes, 3 rebounds and a steal, but damn, he is taking such a big amount of shots. And expecting this to be close like I am, you go back to the game against Arizona last time they played when they won 82-73. He got to the foul line and shot 11 of 12. That's where that, I talked about this last night as well. It's usually boring when it hits the free throw air time. Most people complain about it. Some want the Elam ending. For us, fantasy guys, prop guys, betting guys, we love that time because it gives you an opportunity with the clock stop for your player to rack up an additional amount of points. And that's what we saw to Tyler Kolek the last couple. And then against Colorado yesterday, Tiger Campbell had 9 of 10 from the foul line. Again, later on when they started playing the foul game, he just started racking up points because he's the one getting the ball. So Tiger Campbell is somebody that went up against Arizona. As long as they don't jack him up to like 8-5 or something, I think he will eventually get there if he continues playing. But I don't know that the algo's that fast. We're probably looking at a mid-7 score, maybe a low-7 score. Still very much in play for me going up against Arizona. So that'll be somebody that I start my lineups with. I'm one of those, and again, I'm pretty stubborn, and when a guy does me well, I just keep rolling him out there, and I don't think twice about it, and I'm going to keep playing him. And if they keep giving me that 21.5 PRA, I'm going to keep slamming that too. But we'll have some decisions to make for sure on Disu. What do you think about the Marquette-Xavier game? Because there's been a couple times on the ropes where Marquette looked dead to rights. They came back. Xavier had a scare there from DePaul. but they just totally just shit kicked Creighton today and look like the team to beat here. But this Marquette Xavier game, kind of like Tulane Memphis on the early slate, probably going to be played into the 80s, 90s, possibly hundreds. Overtime potential there. They're going to be expensive on both sides. Do you just kind of approach it the same way we just talked about Tulane, where we're going to get, one of the expensive guys on each side most likely, and then just try to throw some cheapies in there, or what do you think? Because there's less opportunities for cheapies, I think, in this game, except maybe like Desmond Cloud, maybe Stevie Mitchell, depending on what they price him at, maybe a little Ben Gold. What do you think about this one?
I'm going to be probably extremely high on Desmond Cloud. I was taking my nap while this game was, finishing up.
Yeah.
But I did read something that Kunkel might have hurt his ankle.
Ooh.
So there could be a little bit of issue there. Plus, Kunkel isn't the greatest defender. He does get into foul trouble once in a while. Like, I feel like Cloud's probably going to play, 20 plus. I think he was 4K or 4.1K tonight. So it's not like I expect him to all of a sudden be like 5K or anything.
Yeah.
So, like on the surface, this is the game we're going to want to target, right? The two big things that stand out to me are one big thing, just two matchups. Like they played twice during the regular season. One game finished 69-68 and 68 possessions. The other one finished 80-76, which is kind of what we'd be looking at. But that played to just 69 possessions too. For whatever reason, when these two teams meet, they play a bit slower than, their normal pace. So I don't know. Like, I'm tempted to go a little lighter on it than I will go the Memphis Tulane game on the early slate. Some of it is going to have to deal with the price points. I know, like, both games are going to have a similar, 5 guys up at the top, really 6 guys maybe in this game. The difference is, I think in that Memphis Tulane game, like you have guys that are consistently going, almost 5X every time right now. Where with Xavier, like you get those 3 guys like Boom, Kobe Jones, and Nunji that are priced up there, but they're more of the 4X play at their current prices. Kolek, we know how the pricing has been slow to update. So, like, I think he was 9.5K today. Somehow he's probably going to be like 9.2 tomorrow. They're, for whatever reason, they're going to drop him down. So I almost think we just have to ride him. Because I think we want to attack like Sule Bohm's defense, really, and I'm sick of seeing Mike post his props about betting the under on Kolek points and then Kolek going over every time. So, like, I'm just gonna ride the guy that is just much better than people think.
Yeah, Xavier, man, they've just been crushed by the injury bug. And looking at this, Nunji got stitches at halftime, but he played through it, tough as nails. And then, right near the end, Kunkel had to limp off with an apparent left leg injury, but there was no trainers that attended to him. So we'll see, though. That could be something that just lingers and costs him some minutes. So we'll have the opportunity to get Cloud in there because they don't really have anyone else to use, maybe a little Cesare Edwards or something. But I'm really curious to see what David Joplin's price will end up being. He hit 4 triples tonight in 18 minutes. Joplin has a really high usage rate, a very high shot rate. He's been a pretty key rotational player for them, but the minutes just have never really been consistent. They pop from 10 to 22 all the time, but every game he steps in, his usage rate's always over 20% because he's out there chucking when he's on the floor. So I'm kind of curious because today was the first time he scored double digits in like a month and a half. So if he comes out like under 5K, I think I may have some interest there in this matchup because He had a 30% usage rate against Xavier last time, took 10 shots in just 16 minutes. So I might have some interest in him depending on what they got him at. There was times he was like 5'9" or 6'2" or something like that. Not interested there, but we'll see. Definitely going to be a fun one. I am really intrigued by it, but for me, I'm all over Campbell, and then we'll see what the prices end up being. But I think, here, let me go to PrizePicks before, because you don't want to ignore our PrizePicks people. See what we got here. I don't know if you had a chance to peruse the PrizePicks board, but I'm going to just check here and see maybe one or two to get people started. Ooh, a little Yale action, huh? Nice. The Bruce Thornton, 22.5 fantasy points. I mean, the way he's playing, that seems like an over. To me, that'll be one that I'm on. I like Colby Jones over 30.5 fantasy points as well. I know the turnovers could hurt that a little bit, but he's just, adding the blocks and the steals, which are worth 3 on PrizePicks. So you have to look at that. They don't have a full board up as expected. There are those two that I like though. And then the PRA, where did it go? On Dylan Penn of Vermont over 20.5 PRA. I like that. And then Bruce Thornton's PRA of 18.5. So riding with a little Thornton tomorrow morning, but that is pretty much it for PrizePicks at this moment. When we have a full board at our disposal in the morning, we'll update the tracker accordingly. All right, so that is it. We've done the early slate with pricings. We've talked a little bit about the main, which will get you guys a player pool to work through. I'll have an article out for the main slate at some point early morning or whatever, maybe even a little bit later in the day, no work or anything. And then no show tomorrow. So no, show for this Sunday slate, but I will have an article for that one and be in the Discord and might even pop on Twitter live a little bit. But the nice thing is that on Selection Sunday, we are here at FTN going to be doing our own Selection Sunday show. Going to go on about 10 to 15 minutes prior to that starting, and then basically just hanging out like we did last year, as the seeds are announced, regions, pairings, all that stuff, kind of giving our real-time thoughts on those and from a DFS betting PrizePicks perspective and all that. So with that being said, I'll extend an official invite to you, Eric, because it's going to be a deal where I've got one or two kind of hanging out with me the duration, but then we're also going to have, depending on who's available, people pop on for like a segment or two and just, hanging out. So if that's something that you have time and availability for during Selection Sunday, you are more than welcome to pop on and hang out with us, my good sir.
Yeah, I will. I will have some time. So
cool. Awesome. Well, that will do it, everybody. I appreciate the continued support and love the Friday staple having my guy here. It's we shouldn't have waited all year to have you on, but we're gonna have plenty of opportunities and lots of shows here, a lot of content, NIT slates, first four mixed with those. There'll be some CBI opportunities, all kinds, and of course the all day first rounds, which is just my favorite time. Always take work off of those days and just stream games, watch games, just put the family away and just do my thing watching basketball. So appreciate it. Thanks again, Eric. I'll be talking to you soon. And thanks to everybody else. We'll see you guys later and good luck.
Have a good night.